Mangwanani Mwalelepo Vanave Africa. Welcome to this Wednesday wholesome edition of Africa. Good morning. My name is Aina Raiza Koyo alongside Ashwin Berry, and we are broadcasting the news making headlines across Africa.
And as you can tell from her joyful countenance, today is Aina's favorite day. It is World Math Day.
Not at all.
Did I misrepresent you?
You misrepresented.
Let's talk about World Math Day. Now, since Pythagoreans created the word mathematics in the 6th century BC, numbers have been a beneficial and challenging part of life. Whether the actual crunching of numbers sounds exciting or repulsive, celebrating World Math Day can be loads of fun. Math is believed by many people to be one of the toughest subjects because of its strictness in needing correct answers, its abstract concepts, and the overall stress involved in succeeding. But no, Aina, don't let that be intimidating.
I left math already a long time ago.
The problem with math is you can leave it, but math won't leave you.
That's the thing.
That's the thing. Here's a video on World Math Day.
Welcome back to Africa. Good morning, and here are the news making headlines. Rights group urges Uganda to shut secret torture sites. Uganda's government uses illegal detention centers as a weapon against dissidents. Human Rights Watch said yesterday in a report featuring interviews with former detainees and eyewitnesses to abductions who described a litany of abuse at the hands of police, army officials, and Uganda's domestic intelligence agency. During the month leading up to the following Uganda's January 2021 general election, government critics, opposition politicians, and protesters were unlawfully detained and forcibly dispersed. In many cases, their whereabouts of the detainees were not known. Victims of HRW about being bundled into vans before being taken to secret detention sites supervised by the ISO. The locations range from residential neighborhoods in the capital Kampala to an island, Lake Victoria, where detainees were allegedly tortured with their captors pulling out of fingernails, burning their bodies with iron, or sexually assaulting them. In some cases, victims were handcuffed, chained, and suspended from the ceiling for dozens of hours at the same time. Others spoke about being injected with unknown substances or subject to electric shocks.
Truly horrific. Now, according to a report, 4 South African cities have been listed among the world's 50 most violent cities. Now, the Mexican Council for Public Security and Criminal Justice has identified 4 South African cities among the 50 most violent cities in the world. According to that report, Cape Town is ranked as the 11th most violent city, followed by Gqeberha at 23, Durban in 35th place, and Johannesburg ranking in at 48th. The rankings are based on the number of murders per 100,000 people in the cities. Now, Cape Town has the highest number of murders in South Africa overall, with 2,911 murders recorded for the period, giving a murder rate of 62.22 people murdered per 100,000 people. The city's murder rate is heavily weighted towards gang-related violence. At number 23 is Gqeberha. In 2020, Gqeberha held a slightly better ranking despite its murder rate going up, a trend which continued in 2021. Gqeberha's murder rate increased to 52.3% per 52.3 per 100,000 people, but moved down 1 position on overall rankings. Durban, which ranked 31st last year, now ranks 35th, while Johannesburg recorded 1,800 653 murders, giving it a murder rate of 30.8 per 100,000 people and ranking 48th overall. The top 10 most violent cities are dominated by Mexican cities, from the 1st through to the 8th position being within that region.
In Nigeria, 14 school principals are demoted, 21 private school licenses are withdrawn. The River State government has announced the demotion of 14 principals of public schools, as well as the withdrawal of the operational licenses of 21 private schools over their alleged involvement in examination malpractices. The State Commissioner for Education, Prof. Kanye Ebuku, said the action followed a letter written to the State Ministry of Education by the West African Examination Council containing a list of 35 secondary schools in the states that have been delisted for malpractice in the conduct of WAEC exams in 2021. The commissioner said it was found that those at the helm of the affairs in various schools allowed the situation to arise, and following that, certain sanctions were decided.
In our next story, Mali's detained ex-prime minister dies on medical parole. Mali's former prime minister, Somelo Bobe Maiga, arrested over corruption allegations last year, died of an undisclosed illness in hospital on Monday, one of his lawyers said. Maiga, a former defense minister, was named prime minister in 2017 and resigned 2 years later. He was detained in August over his suspected role in the purchase of a presidential plane during the rule of ex-president Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, ousted in a military coup a year earlier. He was charged with multiple counts of graft and was awaiting trial. Lawyers maintained their client was innocent. One of them told Reuters he died at a clinic in the capital Bamako on Monday morning, where he had been hospitalized on parole since December. His family and doctors had unsuccessfully pushed for Maiga to be allowed to travel abroad for treatment as his health deteriorated in Bamako's main prison. Relatives said authorities did not reply to their evacuation requests.
In our next story, no country met WHO air quality standards in 2021, and this is according to data. Not a single country managed to meet the World Health Organization air quality standards in 2021, a survey of pollution data in 6,475 sites showed. The WHO recommends that average annual readings of small and hazardous airborne particles, known as PM2.5, should be no more than 5 micrograms per cubic meter after changing its guideline last year, saying that even low concentration cause significant health risk, but only 3.4% of the surveyed cities met the standards in 2021, according to data compiled by the IQM, a Swiss pollution technology company that monitors air quality. As many as 93 sites saw PM2.5 levels at the times they recommended level. India's overall pollution level worsened in 2021, and New Delhi remained the world's second most populated capital, and this is according to data. We bring you more news after the break.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Let's get into the second half of your top stories. Ghana government to cut salaries of appointees up to 30%. Ghana President Nana Akufo-Addo could reduce the salaries of appointees between 20% and 30%, according to reports by local media citing reliable sources. Salaries of ministers, heads of state enterprises, as well as heads of municipal and district assemblies will all be affected. According to reports, discussions are currently ongoing and the final decision would be out this week. The move is to protect social interventions such as the school feeding program. According to the sources, critical among the matters under discussion is whether to maintain the 20% cut across the board or increase it. One measure to keep the economy running that the government announced earlier this year is that the Treasury will reduce the allocation of metropolitan, municipal and district assemblies for the first quarter of 2022 by roughly 20%.
National Identification Authority proposes a super ID. The National Identification Authority says it is working on a national identity smart card that would do away with the need to have multiple IDs. Currently, Tanzanians have several identification documents, including national ID, driving license, health insurance ID, social security fund membership card, employment ID, transport fare card, and bank cards, among others. But NINDA Director General Edison Ngui said during the weekend that the proposed smart card would allow holders to access multiple services, including finances, transport, and insurance. We want it to be recognized as an ATM card, an insurance and license document that will enable citizens to conveniently access services, Ngui added. He said as part of efforts to implement the plan, NINDA has started to integrate various identification systems in both public and private sectors.
Now in an update from the Ukraine war, terror of African students in Russian-occupied Kherson. About 100 African students are pleading for help to leave the Ukrainian port city of Kherson more than 2 weeks after it was captured by Russian forces. They have been sheltering for days in underground bunkers on campus in bitterly cold temperatures with no heating or supplies of medicines. They say they are traumatized and desperate to leave the southern city. One student told the BBC that they could still hear the terrifying continuous sound of gunfire, explosions, and military aircraft. The Nigerian students among them have appealed to their government to help evacuate them before it is too late. They have told the BBC that they are among the last foreigners left in the city. In the meantime, the students, some of whom are from other countries, including Cameroon, Ghana, Egypt, Tunisia, and Morocco, said there was still some food available at the university, but that most supermarkets had run out of supplies. Those that are open are selling basic food supplies at double or even triple the normal price.
In our next story, rhinos said to be among Tanzania's most prolific dies. A rhino thought to have had the largest family in East Africa had died at the age of 43 in Tanzania. Rajabu, an eastern black rhino, was first sighted in Ngorongoro Conservation Area in 1979. It roamed the Ngorongoro area freely for more than 14 years before moving to the Serengeti National Park. The rhino is said to have died of old age. It had a large family and was said to have been one of the most productive male rhinos in Tanzania. In the wild, rhinos typically live up to between 37 and 43 years or up to 50 years in captivity. The eastern black rhino is listed as critically endangered. Its numbers are dangerously low because the animals are often illegally killed for their horns.
Now in the last of our top stories, world sleepwalking to climate catastrophe. This is according to the UN chief. UN chief Antonio Guterres said on Monday the world is sleepwalking to climate catastrophe, with major economies allowing carbon pollution to increase when drastic cuts are needed. The planet-saving goal of capping global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius is already on life support, he told a sustainability conference in London. Keeping this goal in play requires a a 45% drop in emissions by 2030, and carbon neutrality by mid-century, according to the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. But even if the nations honor newly revised pledges under the Paris Agreement, emissions are still set to rise 14% before the decade ends. The Russian invasion of Ukraine, he added, could further derail climate action, with importers locking in fossil fuel dependence as they scramble to replace Russian oil and gas. All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories. After the break, we'll be looking at the Yes to Choice protest. Stay with Africa. Good morning.
Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. Now, protesters took to Windhoek streets on Saturday to campaign for the rights of women to end unwanted pregnancy legally and safely. The Yes to Choice march took place ahead of the Parliamentary Standing Committee report that is expected to be made public soon on whether or not to reform the current Abortion Act. The nearly 50-year-old law extends a near-total ban on legal and safe abortions in Namibia. This clip was prepared by Yana Marie Smith.
How many women have bled out on their way to the hospital from trying to perform backdoor abortions by themselves?
How many 19-year-olds are dying because African leaders are unable and, more importantly, unwilling to allow us access to safe reproductive health care? Abortion Sterilization Act of 1975 is a remnant of apartheid, and in this country we love talking about how much we hate apartheid, how much we want to distance ourselves from it, how much we've grown from it, how much we've moved and want to move on from it. But how can we really move on from apartheid when we keep laws in place, when we keep laws in place that were created by a government whose entire legacy was to control us?
They refuse to legalize abortion, not because they're trying to save unborn children, but because it's about control, it's about violence, and it's about power. We always say that we want a safe Namibia. We say we want a peaceful Namibia, and we say we want a Namibia that's abundant for all. How can we know peace when the state is at war with our bodies, and with our rights, and with our bodily autonomy? How many people have performed backdoor abortions because our state has failed them and the state has not given them access to what is not theirs? How many of us are going to be forced carrying pregnancies to term? How many people are in jail at the moment for trying to end their pregnancies? How long will we allow the state to dictate when we are ready to be parents, when we ourselves have told them that we are not? If I tell you that I don't have the emotional, physical, financial, mental, or spiritual capacity to be a parent, who are you to decide that I am? Last year, I went to a primary school where 2 girls who were under 13 were raped and impregnated. The one girl was pregnant with twins and had a miscarriage at 7 months. The other girl had carried her pregnancy to term, but wasn't able to finish primary school because there was no one there to take care of her baby. Why were these girls forced to carry these pregnancies to term? Our current laws are not liberal enough. They're not extensive enough. And again, they're failing the people they're meant to protect. When we say we want abortion to be legalized, we're not asking to make it accessible for a few. We're asking you to make it accessible to all. It needs to be comprehensive. It needs to be free. And it needed now.
This law has been inherited from apartheid. It's a 1975 law. At the time when the white Afrikaans government came together,
they noticed that white women were terminating their pregnancies, and they said that it would go against the legacy of a utopian white South Africa, and hence they brought in the Abortion and Sterilization Act of 1975 to preserve white legacy, not to preserve the lives of all women. And that is why we are sitting with this law.
Abortion is about allowing women the right to make choices about when they want to have children in relation to their age, financial stability, relationship stability. It is not the place of the government to legislate against women's choices. Raising a child is not an easy task. It requires social, emotional commitment coupled with financial resources. If a person feels they are not ready to have a child, it means that the pregnancy is unwanted. The resultant allowing a fetus to grow into a child is worse than abortion, since the resultant child will grow into a non-conducive environment without love and care.
I'm here to represent every girl child, every woman, even the ones that are born today, so they can have a choice should they find themselves in a situation where they don't want to continue with the pregnancy. They need to be able to have a choice. That is why I'm here. And also the restrictive abortion law should be repealed. You cannot say it is okay to abort one fetus and not the other. You know, we want women to have a choice, and it is their body, so they should have a right to decide what they need to do with their bodies.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Right now, we're going to take a trip to Zambia and get the news on the ground from Mr. Mike Sichula. Mike, Uriwanji.
Nirebuino Mulibwanji, Africa, good morning.
Bueno. Now, after a 2-year absence amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, Zambia's biggest agricultural and commercial show is back this year. I remember loving the commercial show in Zimbabwe as a young kid. Tell us about the Zambian one. Are people excited?
Yes, indeed. The news has excited a number of Zambians. And also yesterday when the Social Society President, Mr. Duncan Mfula, was addressing the media, he did say that the delayed 94th edition of the show will run from the 27th of July to 1st August 2022 under the theme Innovation Through Technology, Technology Transforms Businesses. So according to him, he has said that because there was a delay of 2 years because of COVID, a number of people, actually exhibitors, foreign exhibitors, local exhibitors, have actually come forth after they heard that the news that the Show Society is back, and they have made a lot of inquiries for them to secure stands and so that they can participate at this show. Then also, the Show Society has also indicated that the society itself is going to be held under strict COVID guidelines to ensure that there's no transmission of the virus. Because as we speak in Zambia, the COVID-19 is still having its toll on a number of people that are getting infected, and they wouldn't want that to be one of the epicenter or the super spreaders of the disease. So the news has actually excited the business community, and including the social society themselves, because they believe that this is a platform that will market Zambia internationally in terms of what is able to be produced locally, and also what the farming community has been able to do in line with the theme of innovation through technology. Technology transforms businesses.
All right, moving on, Mr. Sichula, the Constitutional Court has ruled that 9 opposition members of Parliament must return to Parliament after 2 more months of absence from the House. Please tell us about why they were absent.
Okay, what happened is that 9 opposition members of Parliament, after the August 12th general elections, their seats were petitioned in the High Court. And when these seats were petitioned in the High Court by losing parliamentary candidates, the High Court did rule that the seats must be nullified because they suspected to have engaged in mouth practices in terms of winning the post. So once these seats were nullified, the aggrieved parties appealed in the Constitutional Court. So the system in Zambia is that whatever has been done at the lower court, if you appeal in the higher court, which is the Constitutional Court, that decision is deemed not to apply. So you can continue as a member of Parliament. So when these members of Parliament went to Parliament, the Speaker then ruled that not until your case is disposed of in the Constitutional Court will I allow you to continue sitting in Parliament. That's how they were barred from sitting in Parliament until their matters were disposed in the Constitutional Court. However, yesterday, Constitutional Court judge ruled that these members should continue to sit in Parliament not until their case are disposed of before the Constitutional Court, which presently has not decided the fate of whether the case, whether the judgment that was made at the higher court should apply even at the Constitutional Court. So they returned to Parliament yesterday to continue in the business of the House.
All right. Now, in a bid to address deforestation as a result of production of charcoal, National Forest Indaba is currently underway in the capital city, Lusaka. Could you tell us about that, Mike?
Yes, the National Indaba on charcoal production is, forest, the process is actually a 2-day Indaba to ensure that there are mechanisms that are addressed. There are mechanisms that will be brought to the fore to address deforestation in the country. Statistics available indicate that deforestation rates in Zambia reach approximately 300 hectares of forest cover is lost every year. This cover is lost through wood production, agriculture expansion, infrastructure development, and fires as our main drivers of deforestation and forest degradation. So the government has come up with this process to ensure that they protect the forest, because Zambia have committed to the 2030 of ending deforestation, and this is one of the ways to ensure that that global commitment that Zambia has made is applied locally. And a number of people, commentators, have actually joined to provide solutions on how to end deforestation to protect forests.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing us your stories. We expect an update next week on the Chipolopolo boys after they face Congo Brazzaville. Thank you very much for bringing us the news from Zambia.
Thank you very much, Africa. Good morning. Have a blessed day. Thank you.
A blessed day we hope to have indeed. Next up, let's have a look at the weather forecast before we talk to Ari in South Africa.
Thank you very much for watching our show this morning. Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa met with 9 premiers of the country regarding the nation's plan and next action in the fight against COVID-19. Ari Khogad, all the way in Cape Town, has this story and more. Good morning, Ari. Please tell us about what the action plan is.
Yes, very good morning. Yes, big announcements yesterday. It was expected. It's a big discussion point. And there's been some relief, I know, in Namibia regarding masks. Some relief also announced for South Africa. It is outdoors, no masks are compulsory. So that is good news. But indoor, it is still mandatory. So indoors, you still need to wear a mask in South Africa. The core of the statement of the president yesterday was that it's still level 1 for South Africa, alert level 1. And there's still a state of disaster. So that will be adjusted, or that will be evaluated month to month. And the challenge is obviously that there is expected a 5th wave expected in 2 months' time. I don't know how they figured that out, but that is expected in 2 months' time. So just briefly, numbers, about 912 new cases the last 24 hours in South Africa. So it is still a challenge in South Africa, a positive rate of 4.7%. And the vaccination is a big problem in South Africa at the moment, especially ages 18 to 35. Only 35% of that age group is vaccinated at the moment. So that is a challenge for South Africa.
We definitely need to see how those millennials should approach vaccination at this time. Now, strong coal prices have resulted in Thungela Resources posting billions of profits for the year ending December 2021. Please expand on that.
Yes, it's big numbers. It must be supply and demand. I suppose if you have something that is in demand and you have the supply, you can ask a good price. So it's big profits. Almost 7 billion South African rand profit in that year was announced by them. It is Thungela Resources. That is the coal price that went up. So the profit ending to December last year was 6.9 billion. So it's a big number. The news coming from that report was it could even have been more. And they say that they lost almost 2 billion rand in South African rand in profit, purely because the Transnet freight rail system is not fully operational at the moment. So there's a big demand for coal, and also there's the big markets opening up in Europe. That is because of what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. They've got big stockpiles. At one stage there was a stockpile of about 2.8 million tons of coal at the resources. So there's big amounts of coal available, and the price seems to be good.
All right, now in your next story, Comair, in a bid to prevent inconvenience to its customers, shifted its maintenance. Tell us about this.
Yes, it shifted their maintenance. It was quite in the news. It was Comair is they're flying Kulula.com, that is quite well known in South Africa, and also British Airways, a very respected international airline. And what happened was that the SA Civil Aviation Authority shut them down for 5 days because of safety reasons. So that's not good for anybody to fly on those aeroplanes. And they even had on this last weekend, they had a scare in Cape Town of a landing that didn't go well. It was delayed a little bit. But anyway, the news is that they had an unscheduled review at the company that does the maintenance on these planes, and that is Lufthansa Technik Maintenance Industrial. And so Comair decided to move all their repairs to South African Civil Aviation, or to South African Airways Technical, and they will handle that. But it's important to have all those technical and repairs in place. But they're flying again. It was just 5 days they were grounded, and it seems to be okay now again. So hopefully the capacity will be big enough for South African Airways Technical to handle all those repairs.
All right, now sticking with the theme of repairs, police in KwaZulu-Natal are unable to do their work in a functional way as concerns are raised about the slow time at workshops for police vehicles being repaired. Could you briefly get into this, Ari?
Yes, briefly, it needs to be in place. It's not good enough in South Africa. We need to have the vehicles in place. In short, there's 184 police stations there. They've got 4,200 vehicles that need to service that in KwaZulu-Natal. Only 1,000 or 1,700 of those 4,200 vehicles are in workshops at the moment. The report said on average, some examples were to do a brake overall was 72 days, to do an engine repairs 53 days, and to have the starter fixed took 113 days, and the battery 79 days. So that's not acceptable. So it is under-resourced at the moment, and they need to fix that.
All right, now in our feel-good story, Pick n Pay have taken initiative regarding vertical gardens and have also unveiled 2 of these vertical gardens in shops in Sandton and Johannesburg. Please tell us about this.
Yes, it's vertical gardens. It's got to do with herbs and spices as well, and lettuce. The big advantage of that, it's 95% less water that is used and 85% less fertilization. So that is a good way to. We used to seeing horizontal farming on the ground. Vertical seems to be the new thing to go. So it's a good initiative from Pick n Pay, and they're showing it off in Cape Town and Sandton as well. Maybe there in the studio you can have some vertical lettuce or some grapes growing there. That would be nice as well.
You send us the seeds and we'll certainly put it up. Thank you very much, Ari, for bringing us the news stories from South Africa.
Big pleasure. Brilliant day to everyone. Talk again. Bye-bye.
All right. Now, in our economic news stories after the break, we're going to be talking about how the Ukraine and Russia conflict has affected the Egypt Central Bank's interest rate. Stay with Africa. Good morning.
Have you received a loan from NSFAF? NSFAF loan is the same as any other loan. It must be paid and settled. NSFAF has a set of guidelines on how you can repay your loan and become debt-free. Therefore, it is important that you, a former beneficiary and a responsible Namibian, show your patriotism by helping pay back your loan and thus helping NSFAF become a revolving fund for the benefit of future potential students. By failing to pay back your NSFAF loan, you risk being blacklisted or having a court order against you. So arrange with the fund to pay back your loan today. For more information on how you can repay your loan, visit our website at www.nasfaf.na or visit our Facebook page or Twitter. Do the right thing and hashtag payback the money.
Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Let's get into your economic news stories. Now, Russia-Ukraine conflict forces Egypt's central bank to raise interest rates. Egypt's central bank raised its key interest rate Monday for the first time since 2017, citing inflationary pressures triggered by the coronavirus pandemic and Russia's war in Ukraine, which hiked oil prices to record highs. The move saw the Egyptian pound slip, trading at over 18 to the dollar by midday on Monday, up from an average of 15.6 pounds for $1. The country has suffered from price hikes since the government embarked on an ambitious reform program in 2016 to overhaul the country's battered economy. The war in Ukraine has hit hard on many nations and threatened food supplies and livelihoods of people across the world. The Central Bank of Egypt increased the key interest rate by 100 basis points to reach 9.75%, up from 8.75%. The overnight deposit and lending rate were also raised by 100 basis points, each to reach 9.25% and 10.25% respectively, the bank said.
Tanzania opens auction for hunting of all the wildlife. Tanzania is allocating wildlife hunting blocks through auction in a bid to raise more revenue. Tourism Minister Damas Ndamburo said successful hunters would be allowed to kill the H elephants, lions and other big game considered unproductive. The East African country is aiming to raise 30 million from the auction. About 25% of the proceeds will be spent in helping communities living near the hunting block, and the rest would be used on anti-poaching programs, game patrol, transportation, civilians and prosecution of offenders. Revenue from wildlife dropped from 48 million in 2019 to 19 million last year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Tanzania is Africa's leading country for big game hunting in unfenced areas.
Now, in our next story, let's get to know the 20 African countries with the highest debt-to-GDP ratio. A recent report by the World Bank showed that more than half of the world's low-income countries are either currently grappling with debt distress or at risk of doing so. Among the 20 African countries with the highest debt-to-gross domestic product ratios are the following countries, according to a report by Statista dated December 2021. Horn of Africa country Eritrea is ranked first on the list with the highest national debt, which stands at 175.1% of the GDP. The island nation of Cabo Verde has a debt-to-GDP ratio of 160.7%, which makes it the second on the list. Mozambique comes third with a debt-to-GDP ratio of 133.6%, followed by Angola, which has a debt-to-GDP ratio of 103.7%. Mauritius and Zambia are fifth and sixth respectively, followed by the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Central African country has a debt-to-GDP ratio of 85.4%. Also on the top 20 list are Ghana, the Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Senegal, Kenya, South Sudan, and South Africa. Namibia ranks 17th with a debt-to-GDP ratio of 69.9%.
Nigerian billionaire Dangote launches 2.5 billion fertilizer plant as prices soar. Nigerian billionaire Aliko Dangote opened a 3 million ton fertilizer plant at the cost of 2.5 billion on Tuesday to target Africa and foreign markets, even as the war in Ukraine has driven up prices for natural gas as a key ingredient for making urea. Dangote said exports from the plant will go to Brazil, which relies heavily on Russia for imports of fertilizer. Shipment will also go to the United States, India, and Mexico, he said at the launch. Fertilizer prices have been rising at the time when plants usually pick up around the world, especially after Russia, the world's biggest exporter for fertilizers, invaded Ukraine last month. The war has also disrupted shipping. The plant, commissioned by President Muhammadu Buhari, is designed to produce 3 million tons of urea per year and supply all major markets in sub-Saharan Africa. Many in Nigeria hope the Dangote plant will help alleviate chronically low crop yields in Africa's most populous country.
All right, that brings us to the end of our economic news stories. Just before we get into the sport, have a look at the economic indicators. Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. Now, Ari Hochard is a man of many talents. He first brought us the pertinent stories from South Africa. Now he brings us the most important headlines from the sports world. Let's have a look at his sports package.
Good day everyone, it's time for international sport and we start off with cricket news from New Zealand. The Women's World Cup that's taking place in New Zealand at the moment, over 50 overs, and top of the table game it was Australia that played against South Africa, and it is Australia that came out winners there by 5 wickets. South Africa batted first, played a quite competitive score, 271 for the loss of 5 wickets in their allotted 50 overs, with Laura Wolfhard again making runs as she scored 90 runs. Australia batted down the runs in the 46th over quite comfortably, and it was the captain Meg Lanning that scored 135 unbeaten runs from just 130 deliveries. Australia now top of the table. South Africa is still second on the log, but they still need to win another game at least to make sure that they qualify for the top 4 in the semi-finals. Other result from the World Cup is that India, they had an important win against Bangladesh. They beat Bangladesh by 110 runs, and now they're also still in the top 4. England and New Zealand, they still have a chance to get into the top 4. West Indies still in the top 4 as well, but South Africa will have a big say in what happens in the rest of the tournament, as South Africa play both India and West Indies in their last 2 games. Now on to some tennis news. The next tournament of the tennis calendar on the WTA and the ATP for the men and the women will be the Miami Open. And news from the tournament that will start later in this week is that Daniil Medvedev, he is unattached to any country at the moment because of what's happening in Ukraine. So Daniil Medvedev, he will be the number 1 seed in the tournament, and he lost his number 1 ranking in the world to Novak Djokovic. That was because Daniil Medvedev lost in the 3rd round of the Indian Wells tournament in California. But if Medvedev can get to the semi-finals of the Miami Open, he will get back the number 1 ranking in the world again. In the women's section of the Miami Open, it will be Aryna Sabalenka, and it is the winner from the Indian Wells tournament, the Masters that just finished. It is Iga Swiatek of Poland. She's an informed player at the moment. She will be 2nd seed. The number 1 in the world, and that is Ashley Barty, is still not playing any tournaments at the moment. And with cycling, we continue on international sport, and is the ABSA Cape Epic that started in Cape Town, just outside Cape Town in Somerset West at the Lawrenceford Wine Estate. Winners of stage 1 in the men's section was Andreas Zewald of Germany and his partner from the Czech Republic, that is Martin Čocek, and they came in a time of 3 hours, 38 minutes and 23 minutes in the first stage. The winners of the women's section of the first stage was Hailey Batten of the United States, and her partner is Sofia Falafoni of Argentina. They came in 4 hours, 50 minutes and 62 minutes. It's a team event with teams of 2 competing in the Cape Epic. There's 530 teams competing in the Cape Epic this year, and the total distance covered over the next week will be 681 kilometers. And we continue with cycling news. It is a Volta de Catalunya, that cycling event, cycling tour that's taking place, and it was quite a flat stage. The first one, it was the sprinters that came to the fore in stage 1, and it was Australian Michael Matthews that came out as winner in the sprint. In the end, he's from Australia in 3 hours and 47 minutes and 1 second. Just 400ths of a second behind him in second place was Sonny Cobrelli of Italy, and in third place it was Francis Quentin Pache in 3rd place. The second stage will be over 202.5 kilometers. And we close off with some golf news. It is the US Masters, one of the big majors that is starting in a few days' time. A few weeks' time. It's going to be the 7th of April to the 10th of April. And news from that event is that Phil Mickelson, one of the previous winners, and he's not going to be able to play in this tournament. He's 51 years old. He played in the previous 28 tournaments consecutively, but he's still, because of personal reasons, he's not going to be able to play in the tournament. Also, Phil Mickelson might be in trouble with the PGA. In the news as well is the rival Saudi Arabia Super League that's on the card, with lots of money that's being put into those tournaments, and Mickelson is accused of recruiting 3 players from the PGA to play in the Super League, so he might be in trouble in that. But unfortunately, Mickelson not playing in the Masters this year. So that's international sports news for today. Hope you have a brilliant day. We talk again tomorrow. Goodbye.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning from the top of the hour. Let's have a look at some of today's headlines. Rights group urges Uganda to shut secret torture sites. 4 SA cities listed among world's 50 most violent places, according to a report. 14 school principals demoted, 21 private schools' licenses withdrawn in Nigeria. Mali's detained ex-prime minister dies on medical parole. No country met WHO air quality standards in 2021, according to data. Russia-Ukraine conflict forces Egypt's central bank to raise interest rates. Those have been our stories.
Thank you very much for joining us on this Wednesday edition of Africa Good Morning. We are so excited to hear from you. You can drop us a DM on Facebook and Twitter, or you can comment on our post. That is at Africa Good Morning. Please do remember to visit our website. It's called One Up 2, and there you can catch all of our NMH's content. And on that note, it's all my love, all my light.
Swera Jakanaka.